The umbrella I borrowed that Tuesday started everything, and I didn't realize it until it was almost too late to matter. It had been raining since early morning. That flat, gray kind of rain that doesn't feel dramatic, just relentless. I had a client presentation at 9, and I'd left my apartment without checking the forecast because I never check the forecast. I figured it would hold. It did not hold. By the time I was 2 blocks from Feldman and Associates, the rain had soaked through my jacket collar, and my laptop bag was doing its best, but I could tell it was losing. I ducked under the awning of a bookstore I had never been inside. Turnstile books, hand-painted sign, window full of paperbacks stacked unevenly, the kind of place that looks like it started as someone's living room, and never fully stopped. I stood there being useless, watching the rain and checking the time on my phone. The presentation was in 20 minutes. I didn't have an umbrella. I had no plan. The door behind me opened and someone stepped out. She was maybe 5'4", dark coat, messenger bag over one shoulder, and she was holding 2 umbrellas. One was hers, clearly. A slightly bent black one, she was already shaking out. The other was a nicer one, navy blue with a wooden handle, and she looked at it like she'd just remembered it existed. She glanced at me standing there in the rain drip zone, jacket already dark at the shoulders. "Do you need this?" she asked. She held out the navy one. Not like she was being generous exactly. More like she was solving a problem and I happened to be in the vicinity. "That's yours," I said. "It's my coworker's. She left it 2 weeks ago and hasn't asked for it." She said it flatly. "She's not getting it back. You look like you need it more than I need to keep holding it." I took it. "Thank you. I'll return it." "You don't have to. I want to." She looked at me for a second. Something careful in her expression. Then she said, "Turnstile books. Before 6. And she walked into the rain like that was a perfectly normal conversation to have with a stranger at 8:40. In the morning, I made my presentation. It went well enough. The clients liked the space layout, had questions about load-bearing walls I answered correctly, and agreed to a follow-up the next week. On any normal Tuesday, I would have called that a good morning. Instead, I spent most of the afternoon thinking about a woman I didn't know whose name I hadn't gotten. I returned the umbrella at 5:15. The woman at the register, older, reading something with a cracked spine, pointed me toward the back when I asked. There was a small desk behind a curtain of hanging plants, stacked with what looked like 3 months of invoices, and 2 mugs of cold coffee. The woman from the morning was standing at a shelf, re-alphabetizing a section of paperbacks with the focused expression of someone who found that kind of task genuinely satisfying. "You came back," she said without looking up. I said I would. People say a lot of things in the rain. She slid a book into place. "How was your meeting?" "They liked the plans. I'm an architect." "I know." I waited. She didn't explain. She just took the umbrella, leaned it against the shelf, and said, "Thanks for bringing it back. Most people wouldn't bother." "I'm not most people." She finally looked at me. Her eyes were a dark hazel, the kind that looked brown until the light shifted. "That's a very confident thing to say to someone you just met. Is it wrong?" She held my gaze for a moment. "I don't know yet." Then, she went back to her books. I left feeling like I'd been let into a room, and then politely shown the door before I could sit down. Her name was Sloane. Not Sloane from the file, a different Sloane. One that fit her the way her name clearly always had. I found that out the second time I came in, 3 days later, when I told myself I was just looking for something to read, and almost convinced myself that was true. She was behind the front desk that time, on the phone, pen behind her ear, a list in front of her. She was cross-culling things off with the kind of satisfaction people usually hide better. She held up one finger when she saw me walk in. I waited. She finished the call, set down the pen. "You again," she said. "I'm looking for a book. Most people who come in here are." "What kind?" "Something good." "That's not a genre." Something that doesn't try too hard. She looked at me for a second, then walked out from behind the desk and led me to a shelf near the back. She pulled something out without hesitating, handed it to me. I read the back. You didn't even think about it, I said. I've been doing this for 6 years. You're not that hard to read. What am I then? She leaned one shoulder against the shelf. Someone who's good at their work and knows it, but got tired of being told that a long time ago. You want to be surprised, but you want it to feel earned, not accidental. She nodded toward the book. That one earns it. I bought it. I also bought 2 others because I didn't want to seem like I'd only come for the one she picked. I read the book that weekend. It was the best thing I'd read in 2 years. I didn't tell her that when I came back the following Monday. I should say that Turnstile Books was not on my way to anything. My apartment was in Logan Square. My office was near River North. Turnstile was in Andersonville, which required a specific intention to reach and couldn't be explained as a shortcut. I started explaining it to myself as exercise. The walk was 40 minutes. I did it 3 times in 2 weeks. She was not always there. Sometimes it was the older woman, whose name was Rosalind, who informed me on my 3rd visit that Sloane owned the place, and had since she was 29, which she said like it was obvious, and I should already know. When Sloane was there, she never seemed particularly surprised to see me, which was either a good sign or a sign she had me fully categorized. And the category was harmless, regular customer. I couldn't tell which. She had opinions about everything in a way that never felt aggressive. Just exact. She thought most modern thrillers had gotten lazy with their endings. She thought certain neighborhoods in Chicago were being discussed to death by people who didn't actually spend time in them. She thought oat milk and coffee was fine, but the cultural moment around it had peaked. She said all of this in the same tone, like the things she believed were simply facts she was reporting. I learned she lived 15 minutes from the store, that she had bought it from a retiring couple who'd run it since the 90s and couldn't find anyone who would keep it as a bookstore rather than convert it into something else. That she had done her MBA, worked 2 years at a consulting firm, and quit after deciding the work made her feel like she was solving problems that shouldn't exist. Her words. She said that last part without drama. Just as information. I learned she kept a legal pad next to the register with a running list of books she wanted to recommend to specific customers. Not titles, customer descriptions. Guy in the green jacket who keeps asking about true crime but needs to branch out. That kind of thing. I found my description on the list, once, by accident. I didn't read past the first line because it felt like looking at someone's diary, but the first line was, architect, asks good questions, pretends to browse. I put the legal pad back face down. One morning I came in during a slow hour, and she was sitting behind the counter reading, feet up on the lower shelf, coffee in reach. She didn't change her posture when I walked in, just said, 3rd shelf from the left, new arrivals came in yesterday, without looking up. I went to the shelf. I found a book I'd been looking for 2 months, which was not a coincidence because I had mentioned it once in passing, and apparently she had tracked it down. How did you get this? I asked, holding it up. She looked over. Trade with a store in Milwaukee. We do exchanges sometimes. I mentioned this once. You mentioned it once. She went back to reading. I stood there holding the book, which I paid $17 for, and which felt like something more than a book even though that was a ridiculous thing to think about a paperback. I asked her to get dinner with me on a Thursday afternoon in October. I had been working up to it for 3 weeks, which I was aware was too long, but something about Sloane made me want to not get it wrong. She looked at me over the counter. Like a date? Yes, you've been coming in here for 6 weeks. I know. You bought 11 books. I know. 2 of them were gifts for other people. I know that too. She was quiet for a second. Then she said, Friday. 7. There's a place called Linden & Co. on Clark. Don't make a reservation, they don't take them. Just show up. I don't know that place. I know you don't. I found Linden & Co. by walking past it twice because the sign was small. Inside, it was warm brick walls, close tables, the kind of place where people lean in when they talk, because the ambiance encourages it. Sloane was already there when I arrived, at a small table near the back, coat over her chair, menu in hand. You found it, she said. Barely. That was intentional. I wanted to see if you'd look for it or give up and go somewhere easier. I sat down across from her. And you found it. She closed the menu. So we can have dinner. We were there for 3 hours. I don't remember what I ordered in detail. Something with short rib, good wine, bread. We kept not finishing. What I remember is that she asked me questions no one had asked me in years. Not about work, or where I'd gone to school, or what projects I was proud of. She asked what I'd wanted to be before I became an architect. She asked what I'd gotten wrong about a person once, and what I learned from it. She asked if I liked being alone, or if I'd just gotten used to it. I answered all of them honestly, which surprised me. She listened in a way that felt like she was actually interested in where the truth was, not just bots the polished version people usually offer on first dates. When I asked questions back, she answered them the same way. Her father had been a contractor. She'd grown up watching him work 60-hour weeks, building things for other people, and come home too tired to build anything for himself. She'd decided early she wanted to own something that was entirely hers. Not because she needed to prove something to anyone, just because the alternative seemed like a slow kind of disappearing. That's why you kept the bookstore as a bookstore, I said. Someone had to. She turned her wine glass, slightly. The couple who sold it to me cried when they handed over the keys. The husband said he'd been afraid it would become a coffee chain. Were you afraid of running a bookstore? Every day. The margins are. She stopped herself. I don't talk about the margins on first dates. Is this our first date? She looked at me. You came in 11 times. We talked for, I don't know, 20, 30 hours total. I know how you take your coffee and what you think about mid-century architecture, and the fact that you hate coriander even in very small amounts. She paused. But you never asked me to dinner until today, so technically, yes. Technically, I said. She almost smiled. Technically. After dinner, we walked 2 blocks in the cold, without deciding to. She stopped outside a corner with good light and turned to look at me. Same time next week? She asked. It sounded easy when she said it, like a plan that was already made. Same time next week, I said. She nodded once and walked to her car, and I stood there for a while in the cold, feeling like something had just started, which was the right feeling, and which I didn't want to examine too closely in case it turned out to be wrong. She didn't show up the next Friday. Write in the comments. Was I right to feel betrayed when I finally found out what Sloane had been hiding, or does the truth change anything? I texted her at 7:15. No response. I sat at Linden & Co. for 40 minutes, with a drink I didn't really want, at the same table, feeling progressively more like someone in a movie who doesn't know they're in a bad scene yet. Then I paid my bill and left. She didn't text back that night, not the next morning either. I checked my phone more times than I want to admit. I went to Turnstile Books on Saturday. Not because I thought she'd be there, but because I needed to do something with my hands. Rosalind was working. She told me Sloane had taken a few days, didn't offer more than that, and seemed to know more than she was saying. I didn't go back for 4 days. That was harder than I expected. By Tuesday I was annoyed, in the productive way, where the annoyance keeps your head cleaner than the hurt would. I went to work, did a site visit, had a conversation about window placement that took an hour longer than necessary, and told myself the whole thing had been a nice few weeks, and probably meant less than it had felt like it meant. I was not particularly convincing. Thursday morning, my phone buzzed. A number I'd saved under her name. No greeting. Just, Penrose. Saturday, noon. I owe you an explanation. I stared at it for a while. Then I replied, okay. Penrose was a restaurant near Wicker Park I'd passed but never tried. Saturday was gray and cold and I walked the last 4 blocks because I needed to think. Sloane was already there when I arrived. Corner table, water in front of her, coat still on, like she wasn't sure she was staying. She looked up when I walked in and her expression was controlled. But under it something was different. Less certain than I'd ever seen her. Hi, she said. Hi. I sat. The waiter came and I ordered coffee because it was noon and I didn't want to drink yet. Sloane ordered the same. The silence wasn't comfortable the way it usually was. I handled that badly, she said finally. You disappeared, without saying anything. I know. After specifically saying same time next week, I know. She put her hands flat on the table, not defensive. Just there. I got scared. Of what? She looked at the window for a second. I've run that store for 5 years. I've built the customer base, the trade relationships, the event schedule, the social presence. Everything that happens there, I decided. Everything that affects it, I manage. She looked back at me. It's the first thing I've ever built that I didn't share with anyone. And I'm a threat to that? No. She paused. You're a variable I didn't calculate for. That's a terrifying way to describe a person. I know. I'm working on it. Her mouth moved a little. Not quite a smile. The thing is, I don't do well with things I can't see the shape of. Relationships. Things I can lose. That sat between us. I looked at her and thought about all the Thursday mornings and the book she'd found in Milwaukee and the legal pad with my description on it. The way she gave recommendations like she had already figured about a person before they had. I need to tell you something, she said. I need to tell you something, she said. Her voice shifted slightly. Careful. My coffee arrived. Neither of us touched it.
That first morning, she said.
With the umbrella. What about it? She looked at me steadily. It wasn't random. The noise of the restaurant seemed to settle back. I waited. Your firm was mentioned in an article about the Wyndham project on Belmont. I'd been looking for someone to consult on a structural issue with the store's back wall. Your name came up twice in the piece and I looked into your work. Your office website had an interview where you mentioned you walked to work through Andersonville when the weather was good. She stopped. I'd seen you outside Turnstile before. Once, maybe twice. You'd walked past without coming in, so you knew who I was. I knew your name and your firm, and roughly where you went in the instincts. The umbrella. I said. I had 2. I could see it was raining. I stepped out at a time I thought you might walk by. She kept her eyes on mine. I wanted a reason for you to come inside. I thought maybe you'd come back. I did come back. I know. I looked down at the table. The whole thing rearranged itself in my head. Her not being surprised when I returned the umbrella. The way she'd said before 6, like she'd already rehearsed it. The book she'd tracked down from Milwaukee after I'd mentioned the title once. All of it still the same facts, different architecture. You positioned yourself, I said. Yes, you manufactured a coincidence. Yes. I leaned back in my chair. Part of me wanted to be cleanly angry, the way you can be when something is clearly wrong. But what I mostly felt was tired. And underneath the tired was something more complicated. Because the mornings had been real. The conversations had been real. The way she'd listened and remembered and pushed back and made me feel like someone who was actually being seen, not just being managed, that had been real. Or it had felt real. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. Because I didn't know how it was going to go. It could have been one conversation, and that was it. It could have been a professional consultation and nothing more. I didn't want to explain something that might not need explaining. But it became something else. Yes. And you still didn't say anything. Her jaw tightened slightly. No. I drank some coffee. She waited. My father was a contractor, I said. I told you that on the first date. She nodded. What I didn't say was that he had a partner for 12 years. Business partner. They built the company together, split everything 50-50. One day the partner decides he's going to sell his share to someone else, someone my dad had never met, and my dad finds out about it by seeing the paperwork in someone else's hands. Everything they'd talked about, every handshake and verbal agreement, meant nothing because none of it was in writing. He spent 3 rebuilding what he had. He spent 3 years rebuilding what never really trusted a partner after that. I'm not a business partner, she said quietly. No, but the principle holds. There's a version of events I thought I was living in. You were living in a different one, and I only found out when you decided to tell me, not when it might have mattered for me to know. She was quiet for a long time. That's fair, she said. Not as a concession, as an actual agreement. I know it is. She looked at her water glass. I thought about telling you maybe 5 times in the past 2 months. I kept deciding there was never a right moment. There's never a right moment. That's how you know it needs to happen. Her eyes came back to mine and something in them shifted. Not crumbling, just opening up a little more space than she usually allowed. I'm sorry, she said. Not as a way to get past this, just because I am. I believed her. That was the complicated part. I had been angry for 4 days, and sitting across from her, I believed her, and both things were true at the same time. We ordered food at some point. We talked. Not about the bookstore or architecture this time, but about the things underneath those things. She told me more about her father. The way he'd worked himself into a life that looked like success from the outside, and felt like a narrowing from the inside. She told me she'd built Turnstile partly as a corrective, a place where she was in control of the whole shape of it, where nothing happened by accident. Except me, I said. Her lips pressed together. Except you. Outside after the temperature had dropped. We stood on the sidewalk with our jackets closed, and the afternoon going gray around us. I need a few days, I said. Not a lot, but I need them. Okay, she said it, without pushing. And when those days are done, we're going to figure out what the actual starting point is. Not the umbrella, not Harbor G. I stopped. Not the first morning. The real one. She looked at me. Something in her face was doing something I couldn't name yet. But it wasn't the careful, controlled expression she usually kept. What if the real one is just this conversation? Then we start here. She nodded. Then she said, for what it's worth. Whatever I planned in the beginning. The part after it, that wasn't. I didn't plan to want to know you. I didn't plan to track down that book from Milwaukee. I didn't plan to sit at the register at 7 in the morning before Rosalind got in and wonder if you were going to come by. I listened. I didn't say anything yet. I'm not great at this, she said. Wanting something I don't control the shape of. I know. I'm trying to get better at it. I know that too. I walked home through Andersonville, the same blocks I had started walking 6 weeks ago to get to a bookstore I had no real reason to visit. I went past Turnstile and looked at the window, the uneven stacks of paperbacks, the hand-painted sign. From the outside, it looked exactly like it always had. I thought about what she'd said at Penrose, that she had seen me walk by before the rain, that she had watched for me and set a small thing in motion and waited to see if it worked, and I thought about the legal pad. My description in her handwriting, architect. Asks good questions. Pretends to browse. She had noticed me before I had said a word to her, and not in a way that was strange or calculating, but in the way of someone who paid attention to people, because she was genuinely interested in them, because that was who she was, and the store was full of that exact quality of attention, and that was why people kept coming back. I had kept coming back. I called her on Sunday evening. She answered on the There's a place on Milwaukee Avenue, I said. Small, no sign, does wood-fired pizza and the best garlic bread I've ever had. You would not find it unless someone told you. A pause. Is that an invitation? Tuesday. 7. Show up and we'll figure out the rest. Another pause, shorter this time. Okay, and Sloane, I said. Yeah. When we sit down, I'm going to ask you something, and I want the answer to be true. Not the right answer. Just the true one. Okay, that's all. I hung up and sat with my phone in my hand for a minute, looking out the window at the streetlight and the cold and the ordinary Tuesday night. Then I put the phone down and went to find the book she'd picked for me the first day, the one that earns it, and read the last 40 pages I'd been saving without knowing why. Tuesday, I got there first. I got us a table near the back, good light, close enough to talk without raising our voices. I ordered water and waited, and when she walked in, she saw me before I stood up. And her face did something I had not seen before. Not the careful, almost smile, not the controlled look she gave everything. Just her face, open for a second, before she got to the table. She sat down across from me. Coat still on, same as Penrose. Old habit. I waited until she had water in front of her. Then, I said, when did you stop thinking of it as a plan? She looked at me. No deflection, no buying time. The day you came back for the umbrella, she said. You didn't have to. You said you wanted to. She turned her glass slightly. Nobody does things they want to do when they don't have to do them. Not in my experience. I kept waiting for you to be performing it, and you just weren't. I wasn't. I know that now. I looked at her across the small table, at the woman who had run the numbers and made a plan and then watched the plan become something else, and who had been scared of that and had run from it and had come back to the table at Penrose and told me the truth before I could ask for it. No more positioning, I said. No more positioning. No more deciding what I need to know before I need to know it, agreed. I leaned forward. Then, tell me something true. Right now. Something you wouldn't have said before. She didn't hesitate. I moved the Milwaukee trade 2 weeks earlier than I needed to because I wanted to see your face when you found that book. She held my eyes. That's the truest thing I've got right now. I sat with that for a second. Then I picked up the menu and handed her one and said, the garlic bread is not optional. She took the menu. She looked at it. And then she laughed, a real one, not the short controlled kind, but the kind that arrived before she could shape it into something more manageable. We walked afterward, no particular direction, and clear, just the city at night in November, cold and clears. Our breath visible under the streetlights, and at some point, without deciding to, we were holding hands, and neither of us made a comment about it, because some things are better when they just happen, without anybody noting the coordinates.